It has been a busy day down in East Rutherford as the legalized tampering period and the time when you can make verbal agreements with NFL free agents has begun. And the New York Giants, well, they have a bunch of comings and goings. We'll talk about it next. Join us on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I'm Paul Dottino. So glad you could join us tonight for what is a special free agent edition of the program because the New York Giants have been busy. Not only have they re-signed some guys, they've added some guys, and then they've also had a bunch of people go through the exit door. So why don't we just get you caught up on exactly what the transactions were. I'm going to get to your phone calls, your chats, your audio, video calls, whatever you want to hit me up with. Coming up a little bit later on in the show, I want to tell you we have a very special guest coming up. In 15 minutes, Tom Thayer, legendary guard, one of the top 100 players in Chicago Bears history, offensive guard and a Super Bowl champion. He is the Chicago Bears radio analyst. He is coming up in 15 minutes to do a live segment to talk about middle linebacker Tremaine Edmunds. Edmunds has been in the league for 8 years, okay? He spent his first several years with the Chicago Bears. Then, with the Buffalo Bills. Went to 2 Pro Bowls with the Bills. Then went to the Chicago Bears. Now, interestingly enough, the Bears were looking for more of a coverage linebacker. Edmunds is like 6'4", 250 pounds. He's a thumper. He's a run stopper more than anything else. And what do the Giants need? A big, sturdy, physical run stopper. They wanted someone with more foot speed and more coverage area. So they decided a couple of weeks ago to give Edmunds permission to seek a trade. No deal could be worked out. He got released, became a street free agent, and today he agrees to a deal with the Giants, who badly needed a veteran middle linebacker after they just released Bobby Okereke a couple of days ago. So that is a huge hole that the Giants had to fill, and indeed, they have already filled it. So Tremaine Edmunds comes to the Giants from the Chicago Bears, and he is the topic of our first guest coming up at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time, Tom Thayer, radio analyst of the Chicago Bears. Now, hopefully a little bit later on after that, we will talk to 2-time Super Bowl champion, former Giants linebacker from their 2016 playoff season. That would be Jonathan Casillas, who also hopes to join us during the course of this program to not only talk about Edmunds, but to talk about going up against the likes of Isaiah Likely, a tight end, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens, now signed or reportedly agreeing to a deal with the New York Giants. And he can also talk about the upping of Jermaine Eluemunor, the Giants' right tackle. Yes, somehow they were able to find the money to make it work and bring Eluemunor back into the fold. And so I want to talk to Casillas, who played outside linebacker during his time with the Giants. I want to ask him what he saw in Eluemunor at tackle. I want to ask him what he saw with Edmunds as a linebacker, because the Giants played the Bears this year. I also want to ask him what he saw in Isaiah Likely, the former Raven, who has apparently agreed to a deal with the Giants. All right, let's quickly go over this now. First of all, any agreements made before Wednesday at 4 are verbal agreements only. They're handshakes, they're verbal deals with the agents. Contracts cannot be signed until each player has undergone a physical and then signed his paperwork after 4 o'clock on Wednesday. That means technically you don't have to do anything with your salary cap until that time. When you have to sign that player, well, that's the time when you're going to wind up releasing players, because once the contract is signed, now that money is on the books. So that's kind of how that works. So there's plenty of time if the Giants still want to maneuver and decide who they want to trim or who they want to rework in terms of their salary cap situation. They've got time to do that till 4 o'clock on Wednesday. So let's get to the scorecard. For the Giants, who comes in? Well, since 12 o'clock today, they've reached agreements not only with Tremaine Edmunds, the Bears linebacker, Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely, Ravens punter Jordan Stout, who, by the way, averaged 50 yards a punt last season. And I believe his net average was like 44 yards a punt. He has a cannon of a leg, kicked in college at Penn State. He knows the Northeast well. Obviously, in Baltimore, they play on real grass. They play outdoors. They have the same kind of Northeast weather that we have. It's not that far down the corridor. That's the tip of the... Remember, the Northeast corridor is really from Washington up to Boston. That's what we call the Northeast corridor. So he's on the southern tip of the Northeast corridor. Kicking in the Meadowlands should not be a problem for him. Obviously, John Harbaugh originally came into the NFL as a special teams coach. He knows his special teams. He's very involved in his special teams. He has decided that he had to have his Ravens punter, and so he brings Stout up to East Rutherford. Also, signing reportedly agreeing to a deal a short time ago, is Ardarius Washington, nickel corner / free safety and kick coverage guy on special teams. Now, a little bit about him. This past year, he only played the last 4 games of the season because he had a torn Achilles. But in 2024, he made 10 starts for the Ravens, had 2 interceptions, 64 tackles. He's got quicks. He plays with a lot of intensity and nastiness. He's very, very aggressive. And he's got outstanding instincts. That's the only reason he can make it in this league at 5'8", 177 pounds. Okay? And physically, he probably reminds me, if you guys remember, some years ago, the Giants had a free agent corner named Dante Dion, who wound up with the Rams and played on their Super Bowl championship team. Well, that's the kind of physical structure you'll see in Ardarius Washington. But again, he can play a slot nickel corner, or he can play some free safety. His instincts are his really, really great attribute, and he's got very quick feet. Not pure straight-ahead burner speed, but very quick feet, which is why he can stay with guys out of the slot. So those are the 4 agreements that came from outside the building since 12 o'clock. Now, the Giants also this afternoon were able to shake hands and reach a deal to retain starting right tackle Jermaine Eluemunor. And how big is that? How clutch is that one? We all knew that the Giants had finally gotten their offensive line woes back to a respectable level, and Eluemunor was clearly one of the best, if not the best, right tackles available in free agency. I thought for sure that somebody would offer him big money. Turns out the Giants were able to retain him. By the way, Jamie, I see that you're on the studio waiting list. I want to try to get to our guest at 8:15, Tom Thayer from the Bears, to talk about Edmunds. If you would be so kind as to call back or come back in later after Thayer. If you want to hang, you can. But I'd rather get to you and anybody else who wants to do a phone call or a video call. I'd like to try to get to you guys after our guest. He's going to be with us for 10 to 15 minutes. Thayer coming on at 8:15. All right, to finish my thoughts. So Eluemunor re-ups with the Giants. That's a huge deal. Of course, Later on, the Giants had to make another move because they've been so busy. And they reached an agreement to retain wide receiver Isaiah Hodgins. The Giants receiver room, very, very thin. We'll talk about that a little more in just a second. But Hodgins apparently stays in the fold with the Giants. Real pro's pro. Let him compete for a job in camp and see what happens. Now, earlier this morning, before the 12 o'clock deadline opened up for free agency, Chris Manhertz reportedly agreed to another one-year contract so that he can stay. Makes perfect sense because John Harbaugh, the Giants' new head coach, is all about physicality. He wants guys who are going to win at the line of scrimmage. Manhertz is an inline physical blocker with a large frame. That's what he does best. And it's clear that they decided, all right, let's retain Manhertz instead of maybe going for Charlie Kolar, the Ravens' third-string tight end, who is a blocker but would cost a lot more money. We also know that, I believe just the other day, just want to throw this one out there, that Gunnar Olszewski did agree to come back and re-signed his deal with the Giants. Obviously, terrific kickoff returner, punt returner, kick returner. He can do it all. And he can also play receiver and can compete in the slot spot for the Giants offense. So in total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 either retentions or additions by the Giants over the course of the last 2 or 3 days. Now, who did they lose? Okay. Recently, they released Bobby Okereke and James Hudson. Today, they released punter Jamie Gillen. No need to have 2 punters on the roster. In addition, free agent exits. Wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, apparently to Tennessee. Cornerback Cor'dale Flott to Tennessee. Tight end Daniel Bellinger to Tennessee. Backup center Austin Schlutman to Tennessee. Yeah, that's 4 Giants. 4, there you can see my fingers. 4 Giants going to Tennessee following former Giants head coach Brian Daboll, now the Titans offensive coordinator. Dane Belton, Giants special teams demon, who had 20 tackles on special teams this year, which was good enough to be tied for 6th in the National Football League. Well, that's going to hurt the specials. Again, we'll see what the Giants can do about, shoring that unit up. But Belton goes to the Jets. That happened just around dinner time tonight. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 free agents agreeing elsewhere since 12 o'clock. Gillen released. And then, of course, this comes on the heels of Okereke and Hudson being released. So that's the scorecard in terms of who's coming and who is going. Don't even bother asking me about the salary cap, because the truth of the matter is, folks, there are a ton of machinations that the Giants are probably doing with their cap as we speak. They certainly have another couple of players, if they want to, that they can trim from their roster and get cap savings. They also have the ability to extend or renegotiate a couple of deals that would also help them out and get them some cap savings for this year. But as it stands right now, I do not know specifically where the Giants' cap number is. We knew they were roughly in the vicinity of about, I think, after the additional funds came in and the CBA said the cap would be at about $301 million for the 2026 season. The Giants were estimated to have somewhere in the vicinity of $7 million. But again, that number is fluid, and I'm sure they're doing a bunch of things to jimmy with it. Dawn Aponte, one of the Giants' newly appointed vice presidents who came in from the league, she specialized in the salary cap and in contracts. So I'm telling you right now, I'm sure she has a very big role in what is going on inside the Giants' offices as they try to finagle as much salary cap space as they possibly can. Well, this is awesome. Tremaine Edmunds is now coming to the Giants. I don't want to have to tell you about him because I didn't see him every week out of the season for the last couple of years. But a guy who did is Tom Thayer, Bears legend and radio analyst and a Super Bowl champion. And Tom, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time tonight because Giants fans are very excited about this signing. They had a gaping hole at middle linebacker, and I'm certainly hoping that you'll be able to give us a heck of a scouting report. So thank you again for coming on.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Can you hear me? Are we okay?
I can hear you great, Tom. Can you hear me?
So, the one thing about Tremaine that he's a football asset. He can play every linebacker position. He can play first, second, and third down. He's great in the locker room. He's even better on the practice field, and he's great in the meeting room. And it's all the essential elements that you need to go out and have a game day performer. He's been an outdoor player his whole NFL career. So whether you have inclement weather, the hottest of the hottest, the coldest of the coldest, he knows how to be prepared for those moments. So I was sorry to see him go, but for me, being an ex-football player, I just wish the best for all the guys that have a chance to play in the NFL.
All right, Tom. So let's go backwards here. About a week or so ago, the Bears gave him permission to seek a trade, and then they couldn't find one, and he was released, and he was put on the street. And then for several days, as he sat out there, we wondered what would happen to him. Finally, the Giants wound up coming to terms today. Again, pending a physical. I know he's got to do all that before he signs his paperwork. So from your perspective, what is it that was missing in his game that the Bears wanted to see, that they were willing to part with him? And then why do you think he was out there on the street for a few days before somebody scooped him up?
I don't think anything was missing. I just think it was a money issue. It was the business side of the sport that they had to make a decision about that to try to free it up some money to get other positions signed. And, and I think that when you're looking at a guy with his experience and where does he fit into your defense best? What position will you have him designated to play? Before the season started, he and TJ Edwards flopped linebacker positions. So like I said, he's been able to play them all, but, you had to figure out at what position he was most needed. And, if you can get a guy like that with that type of commitment, that type of experience, it's a sensibly priced football player on your team. Like I said, I think he's an asset on anybody's team. I know the Bears, the players and the fans were sorry to see him go, but, it's the unfortunate business side of this game.
Well, Tom, let me ask you, the Giants have this hole at middle linebacker because they just released Bobby Okereke. We know John Harbaugh just came onto the scene a short time ago, and he obviously decided what he wanted on this roster and believes that Edmunds, and I guess he lists at 6'4", 250 pounds. You
Right.
have to tell me if you still believe that's legit. Harbaugh is one who has a reputation for wanting guys who are thick, sturdy, and have big frames in the middle. And obviously, Edmunds has a much more suitable physicality size than Bobby Okereke did.
Right. The one thing about Tremaine, he runs laterally as well as he does vertically. And the thing about with the Giants, I think that he's going to be protected better up front than he was with the Bears defensive line. So when you give a linebacker of his athleticism that extra second of freedom, you're opening up the world to a linebacker like that. And having the chance to play with Hampton and McMichael and Mike Singletary, a 10-time Pro Bowl linebacker, when you have these defensive tackles, these defensive linemen that can come out and provide that three-quarter extra second of protection for the linebacker, man, they are capable of doing so many things for your defense.
Now, last year, correct me if I'm wrong, he had suffered a groin injury there for a bit, right? And he was playing some more weak side. And then when he came back from the groin injury, one of the things that I remember hearing when the Giants went out to Chicago and, as you know, lost to the Bears in what was a pretty wild game, was that he was a little bit slowed by that. What, do you think that was at all a factor in how they viewed him? And do you think at all that that's a problem? He's been around the league for a while. You hate to see guys get hurt as they get older.
No, I don't think he's got an injury reputation. It was just something that had popped up during the course of this year. And another thing too is, when depending upon the head coach you play for and the paces they put you through in practice, sometimes you have the luxury of not practicing as hard as you do with some head coaches. And Ben Johnson was the opposite. They were practicing hard. They were going all out every day that he had the opportunity for those guys to be on their feet. And sometimes these guys, an instant in practice can take a little bit, create a little bit of a hiccup for you. But to me, Tremaine's not a guy that you got to go, he's got an injury-riddled background, so we really got to be leery of that. You don't. It was just a one-time thing that popped up. Both he and TJ Edwards in the course of the season got banged up a little bit, but they were both able to come back and answer the bell. And from what I've seen out of Tremaine, when he's healthy, he's got a wide variety of skills. He's got an incredible coverage radius. He moves well. He's willing to take on blockers at or near the line of scrimmage. And he can cover these dynamic tight ends in the league right now. And when you talk about a 6'4" frame, he's got that ability to stick with them and be a real, a really good coverage linebacker.
Why do you suppose he was on the street for a few days, though, before the Giants were able to make this signing or, this agreement? Because it just seems to me that, if he was still such a high-level player, they might have had competition for him, no?
Yeah, I think there's so many new head coaches in the league. You're talking about a lot of different defensive coordinators, and are they looking for the style of defense that is going to fit him best? You look at other guys that were on the street up until today, like Angeloni from Detroit.
Right.
So there's some similar templates that were out there. But, I just think it's the investigative work that they do behind the scenes, and they have to make sure that you're healthy. The agents are involved in the negotiations that they go through. Sometimes you hear a player is asking for a number that's not realistic. And I think when you find two cooler heads that prevail and start the decision process and the development of a contract, I think that's kind of a relief in knowing, okay, we have a guy that's going to come in here, day one OTA, you're going to give him a starter's jersey, and he's going to wear it the whole season. So, Tremaine's not a guy that you're going to have question marks about coming to camp. He's going to be a guy that is going to take the offseason really serious. He's always physically prepared to go through a lengthy season. And I think from the moment you sign him, like I said, you're bringing a football asset into the locker room.
Can you tell me this, Tom, because we don't get to see the Bills a whole ton, or the Bears, the two teams he's played for. We don't see them a whole ton. Obviously, Giants fans are watching Giants games, not Jets games. So I don't think they saw a lot of him when he was in Buffalo. We do notice 900 career tackles over 8 NFL seasons, and every single season, it wasn't just an average, he had a minimum of 100 tackles. We know that tackle numbers can be misleading, because if you make a ton of tackles, on the wrong side of the line of scrimmage, you're a compiler as opposed to a guy who has an impact. From your perspective, how is he at making worthwhile tackles, penetrating the gaps, maybe making some in the backfield, certainly getting some for no loss? Or are a lot of those tackles compiling numbers?
No, I think he's a blitzable linebacker. If you can scheme him in to take advantage of maybe a vulnerability and protection of your opponents, he's a guy that you can send. And with that length and his ability to anticipate where the quarterback's going to be, he has the ability to be super disruptive in that way. And then when you look at the team he played on last year, not this past season, a year ago, Eberflus's last year, he spent a lot of time on the field, and he spent a lot of time on the field when they were behind. So, yeah, he did pile up the tackles, but, there wasn't two teams that were going toe-to-toe. A lot of times the Bears were fighting an uphill battle, and especially early in the game, and then if the opponent got a lead, that's what they went with. I just think that, he was super fortunate to play on some good teams in Buffalo early in his career. Unfortunately, he came to the Bears and played in a couple of not great teams, and then he had a chance to be on this team with Ben Johnson. And the neat thing about him this year is he got to be a big part of the culture change in the locker room, in the building, on the practice field, in the meeting room. Everything that Ben was requiring out of you, he fit in perfectly. And so that's what I liked about Tremaine, is the fact that Dennis Allen came here, kind of figure out a role for him on, Dennis Allen's defense. He was able to flourish in it. Then unfortunately, when you look at Tremaine and some of the other guys in the business end of football, they ended up leaving, just like DJ Moore and some of the other guys that have left already.
Tom, I want to build off of what you just said about him being in the locker room and being the kind of guy you could always count on. John Harbaugh has made very famous his quote about what he likes about a player. Who is a John Harbaugh player? And he goes, that's a guy who loves football, who thinks about football all the time and just loves the game. And it doesn't matter if it's in the meeting room, if it's at practice, if it's on game day. It sounds like Tremaine Edmunds is one of those guys.
Well, I played with Jim Harbaugh for 7 years. I got to meet Mr. Harbaugh a few times out at the practice field. And you see the way these guys are raised. They have the roots of football that is grown into their system. And I've always liked John Harbaugh and the way he's handled himself in the good times and bad times. I like his serious approach to football. And Jim was the same way, whether he was a teammate or now as a coach. And so I think when you have a guy coming into your locker room with a new head coach, there's not a lot of things that you're going to have to tell Tremaine. He knows how to act. He knows how to be. He knows where to be on time and how to act inside all of the different elements you need in order to make your football team better. And he's not going to be there talking to a young guy and kind of not telling him the right things to do. He's going to be an example of the right things to do. And I think that's the best thing about football players. And a lot of the guys that I played with in the Bears in the 80s and 90s, they set the example to me of how I had to act, how I had to be in front of Ditka. Ditka was a special teams coach before he became a Super Bowl head coach. And the same thing with John Harbaugh. So I don't care what position you did or you didn't play or what your background is as a coach. You got to have that template, that the seniority figurehead as the head coach in order to, have that whole locker room trust you. And so I think John's going to get that from the minute he gets a chance to meet with his team in rookie minicamp and then in OTAs. And I think bringing a guy like Tremaine on board is going to make that process, go more smoothly than if you didn't have a guy like Tremaine in the locker room.
Tom, can you tell me, did Tremaine wear the green dot and call the defensive signals for the Bears? And if so, okay, you say he did. Was it a complicated defense? Because clearly, coming to the Giants, Denard Wilson is now going to be their new defensive coordinator coming over from Tennessee. He's known to like a 3-safety package to just play 2 linebackers, as a lot of teams like to do nowadays. And Edmunds, I'm assuming, is going to be given the green dot. So how do you think he'll handle the change in the football nomenclature, if you will? I mean, you got to have a sharp football acumen sometimes in this game.
I think he'll be outstanding because you look at the 2 defenses that he went through in the Eberflus regime and now the Dennis Allen, Ben Johnson regime. It was 2 different types of defense. You have Matt Eberflus, who likes to have a 2-gapping defensive line that kind of try to slow up multiple offensive linemen and allow the linebackers to run free. And he flourished in that defense. And you talk about the amount of tackles that he had. Then he got in the Dennis Allen system, and Dennis Allen is more of the defensive lineman explode upfield, try to disrupt the flow of the offensive backfield and let the linebackers react from there. And he flourished in that system as well. So that's the thing about what I like about Tremaine is he's able to play the scheme that he's being coached in. And he's not just a statue-like figure. He's not a one-dimensional linebacker. He has the ability to play multiple positions. And even if he didn't wear the green dot, I don't think it would affect him at all. But I think he's more than capable of wearing the green dot, sometimes in an instant explaining the responsibilities to maybe a guy that's early in his career or young into the lineup, because he knows everybody's position equally as well. And I think that was one of the key ingredients between the linebacker position with the Bears the last couple of years. TJ and Tremaine, they knew every single position, and so they could control the defensive backfield behind them, and they can make sure all the defensive linemen were in the right position according to the multiple shifts that they have in the offenses they're seeing now in the different personnel groupings. So I don't think there's going to be an offense that you're going to face next year that Tremaine's going to be confused. I think he's going to be the guy out there that's make sure everybody's in the right position as soon as they start breaking the huddle.
Tom, do you have a few more minutes? Can I still keep you?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I want to ask you a little bit about the Bears made a very quick turnaround over the course of the last couple of years. We've seen it. Obviously, the Commanders had done it not this past season, but the season before. The Patriots did it this season. You had a chance to see the Giants when they came to Chicago this past season, and obviously lost the game in the final minutes of the contest at Soldier Field on a very wild day. What were some of your thoughts, if you could, about Jackson Dart and what you saw from this Giants defense, who John Harbaugh said there's a lot to like there, and he thinks this is a team that can respond and rebound pretty quickly?
You know, to me, I'm a huge fan of NFL football. I'm a fan of every team. And I was disappointed when the running back and the receiver got hurt for the Giants, because I really had fun watching those young guys there on the Giants. And then I like Jackson Dart, but I would love to, if I was his teammate, I would have him the conversation about just, kind of control. You don't want to say control, but, protect yourself a little better. Listen, if you get one extra yard and get crushed on the sidelines, or you take a half yard less and you get out of bounds harmlessly, we're okay with that. Because the best thing that we need as the other 10 guys in the huddle is you being the 11th. And so listen, Jim McMahon, he was the wildest, craziest type of quarterback you could play with. He liked to throw the ball, but he was willing to run the ball. He would scramble and lower his shoulders against bigger guys. He did everything that Jackson Dart is doing today. And we kind of asked him, and Ditka had to ask him just to temper it down a little bit, because if we were going to win games, it was going to be because Jim was on the field. So where the Giants are going with John and what the young, exciting guys can offer the league, I think everybody's interested in seeing the Giants and what can become of them. And because John Harbaugh has been in Baltimore for so long, it's like you present him on that new stage, the biggest stage in the NFL in New York City. It's just going to be amazing to see what becomes of that group.
And I have a feeling that you probably would applaud what the Giants did today. They reached a little bit deeper into their pockets than I think they were hoping to, but they were able to retain starting right tackle Jermaine Eluemunor, who played very well for them last year as the Giants' offensive line finally got above sea level for the first time in several seasons. And I'm sure, you being an offensive lineman during your career, you understand not only the value of protecting your young quarterback, who is your future of your franchise, but also the ability just to win the line of scrimmage, which is where it always starts.
Well, if you really want to go old school, I've always been a Jim Finks type of guy. And that means I'm going to start with the offense and defensive line first, and then I'm going to work my way out from there. And I think that's the thing about the New York Giants is if they can get that offensive line to be a lot what the Bears have talked about, gain that continuity where you can have a healthy group of guy out there for the long period of time, that's going to do more to help your offense than any of the other guys that touch the football can have. And then you guys, listen, everybody has a lot of respect for the defensive front of the New York Giants and what their rush capabilities are and how that talent, if they all come together, what that can be. And I do think when you have a guy, a senior leader, a senior figurehead in that locker room like John Harbaugh, I think, he's the type of guy that can elevate expectations of players on the practice field, a lot like what Ben Johnson did. The first thing he did is he said, These players got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. For the wide receiver position, no block, no rock. And the running backs, they got to be comfortable getting the dirty yards. And whenever he said, it rang true. He didn't make any false claims at the podium when he was getting hired and then go out in the training camp practice field and these guys are going 60%. No, when they were in pads, they were going 100%. They were expected to be out there as long as he figured that they could get the best type of work out of them. And it was probably the most no-nonsense training camp I've seen around here in 20 years. And my first training camp with Ditka, we went 22 straight days of doubles, full pads every practice, and conditioning after every afternoon practice. So I've seen the hardest of the hardest. And from what I saw out of Ben this year, it may have been one of the hardest training camps in totality that I've seen since the Ditka days.
And that's the kind of style that John Harbaugh is going to bring to the Giants. It's quite obvious.
You're going to figure out who wants to play football and who doesn't. And in the long run, it's going to pay dividends. And so I think when you get that kind of that mentality, that disposition of the Harbaugh brothers, you know what you're getting, man. And so I would say make sure that you're diligent about your preparations in the offseason if you're on that New York Giants roster to be ready for what you're going to go through.
Tom, great information on Tremaine Edmunds. I know you are part of the Bears broadcast team as their radio analyst. Where else can people catch you, either online or radio and TV when you're out there in Chicago?
You know, Jeff Joniak and I do a podcast every week that's on the Bears website, and we do a little bit of radio work with ESPN. I'm not a social media guy. I have no footprint. So talking to you is a big highlight of mine because I'm not on social media 6 times a week or whatever. I just go watch the combine, pay attention to the free agency, and go to practice every day and just watch my Bears.
Well, Tom Thayer is one of the Bears' top 100 players of all time. He's a Bears radio analyst. He is a Super Bowl champion. He is one dynamite of a nice guy. And I can't tell you how much, Tom, I appreciate your time tonight. The input on Edmunds, invaluable to Giants fans back here in New York, because we could tell you are not just a football lifer, but you love the game, and that means a lot.
I played with some of the best linebackers in football, and I know what good football players are, and I know Tremaine Edmunds is a good football player.
Tom, all the best to you. Good health. Enjoy the summer, and most importantly, enjoy the upcoming season.
All right, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Be well. Tom Thayer, former
Go
Chicago Bears starting offensive lineman, Super Bowl champ. So great to have him on the program tonight. And folks, I could not have thought of any better guest to give you an idea of what Tremaine Edmunds would bring to the New York Football Giants. So I do apologize. We had a couple people wanted to get in. They wanted to ask either a video or audio call. Tom was here just to talk about Edmunds. He wasn't going to take calls. I wanted to get that part of the program out of the way. I don't want to say that disrespectfully, but I wanted to bring that to you first. Now that we got that stuff, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got a lot of information out of it, because that man knows what he's talking about. I will be glad to open up. We have the chats already open. I will be glad to open up the phones and or the video to anybody who wants to come back in. I believe there was a Jamie and a Steve or a Scott who all wanted to get in while Tom Thayer was talking to us. So I do invite you, please, if at all possible, come on back in. We hope coming up in just a bit, if he can make it, he's hoping to make it, will be Giants linebacker Jonathan Casillas, who will have more to say about the specifics of who the Giants retained and who got away and where they might go from here, because they've still got some holes to fill. This is not a finished product yet. In fact, they kind of got to do a few more things before they get to the draft, in my opinion. You don't want to just leave it to the draft. And there's not much money left. So we're going to have to see what's going on. Armand Duda applauding us for the Big Blue Breakdown Live with a special Monday night edition. Yeah, I told you last Wednesday when we were on the program, if news warranted, if free agent news warranted, I would be back with you earlier. And I tried to promote it several times during the course of the afternoon today. Once it became apparent, especially when Edmunds came aboard, I knew you guys would want to have a program. So I had to be here for you. Hooks Rub says, what's up, Paulie? G-Man Nation. Exciting for free agent signing so far. I think there's a lot of reason to be excited, especially if you've just listened to Tom Thayer and he tells you about what Edmunds will bring to the table. Boy, do I even want to? I don't think I want to, but could I possibly say he may have the kind of impact on this team that Antonio Pierce had on the Giants when he came from Washington many years ago and wound up being one of the core players on a Super Bowl championship team? Can I dare say that? Oops, I just did. Sorry, not sorry. Jared Brown, 3289. Could we have 4S now if we draft downs? Oh, he's talking about 4 safeties. I understand. Looks like Tony Parenti would like to get in moments here. Tony, it says your devices are not connected. If you want to make sure that you're connected either with your audio and or your video, I will be glad to bring you up on the program. I love getting people to talk on the program instead of just reading chats all the time. Certainly, please, by all means. Eastwick Bando says, Ardarius Washington. Yeah, for sure. We mentioned him before. A Raven, just like Stout, the punter, was a Raven. So that is 3 Ravens between Washington, Stout, and Likely that all wound up agreeing to deals with the Giants today. Aiden Fink says, good evening. Of course, this big episode falls when Team USA is playing in the WBC and Hofstra basketball. Yet we'll still be here watching the other 2 on my work laptop while on a train. Well, thank you, Aiden, for sticking with us, because I'd like to believe we're bringing you information that you will enjoy and you will use as you begin to formulate your opinion about what the Giants are doing. JDJ, one of our regulars as well, says Tennessee Giants signed half our 2022 draft class. Tell them to leave us alone, Paul. Our name 188 says excellent day, Giants. Armand Duda says love that we are keeping Eluemunor. Excited about signing Edmunds too. Says also Likely is a great pickup too. Dylan 9329 says good evening. Hope you're well, and I hope the same for you. Thank you for jumping aboard on tonight's program. Our name 188 says Renee Thompson. I think he was trying to talk about Washington as maybe perhaps a Renee Thompson-like player. I seem to remember Renee Thompson having more height and length than Ardarius Washington does. But you can double check me on that by checking Renee Thompson's bio. I don't think he was 5'9", 177. I really don't. Kevin Sullivan 8 says, great day one. Aiden Fink says, Giants should go after Elston Jenkins now that he was let go by Green Bay. Aiden, honestly, I don't know how much money the Giants have left to go after another free agent. Again, this is fluid. They got a bunch of things I'm sure they're working on right now, and I think that Donna Ponte is probably better qualified to do that than anybody. She's been in the NFL offices working on this stuff for years. I mean, if she can't finagle the numbers correctly, I don't know that anybody can. Our name 188 says, loves Gunnar Olszewski. I like him too. And I think he absolutely should get an opportunity to earn snaps in the slot this year. I also believe, and we've talked about this on the show, I think a week or two ago, as well as on Big Blue Kickoff Live, I believe Jalen Hyatt, it's like Custer's last stand. I said that on today's earlier program. This is Custer's last stand for Jalen Hyatt. 3rd round draft pick, okay? This is the final year of his contract. He needs to step up and show it now. And I truly believe that the Giants will probably put him in the slot and let him compete with Gunnar Olszewski and whoever else for wide receiver / snaps in the slot because that's where Hyatt played at the University of Tennessee when he was a star and made himself be a highly draftable player. Now, at the same time, let's talk schematics. I believe that the Giants also signed Likely to be a big slot. Now, why is this important, folks? Well, because the first tight end, or at least in recent memory, a lot of teams have gone towards using the tight end as a big slot. The guy who really brought that into nouveau in recent years was Travis Kelce with the Kansas City Chiefs. He loves to line up in the slot. In fact, he'd rather line up there than anywhere else. But he will also go boundary. He will also go H-back. He will also go on the line. But he loves being in the slot. Who is the Chiefs' offensive coordinator the last couple of years? Matt Nagy, who is now the Giants' new offensive coordinator. You want to bet that you're going to see a ton of Travis Kelce plays in the Giants' playbook for Isaiah Likely? Oh, I'm sure that's going to happen. I don't even have to roll the dice on that one. Nope, don't even have to guess. A lot of Travis Kelce's plays are going to wind up in the playbook of Isaiah Likely. Now, in combination with Theo Johnson, that's very interesting because we know the Giants want to be more physical. Well, you could wind up seeing a ton more double tight end sets, right? And Likely may wind up being the guy standing up in the slot when they've also got Theo Johnson on the in-line position. Now, there may be other times where they want to get more receivers on the field. But I think right now you're looking at the Giants being, and we've seen this before, remember they got Andrews down there in Baltimore, and they love to play Andrews and Likely, and they even used Charlie Kolar, who got away in free agency today. I forget where he signed, but Kolar got away. He was a blocker. He was the equivalent of Manhurts, okay? So I think Harbaugh loves to be able to get three tight ends in the game. We know that from his time in Baltimore. We know he's not afraid to throw to two of them, that being Andrews and Likely. So now, what does he have here? He's got the two lead tight ends with Johnson and Likely. Likely is better suited because of his quickness and athleticism, even more so than Theo Johnson. Likely is more explosive for big plays, so he probably would be more the slot, the big slot. And Johnson would be more the standard tight end. Then you've got Manhurts as the third tight end, as the big, powerful blocker. And if they decide to keep four tight ends, and I think the only reason they keep four is because maybe they like Thomas Fidone. We don't know what the new coaching staff thinks about Thomas Fidone. But if they really like Thomas Fidone, one of last year's 7th-round picks out of Nebraska, who was hurt for much of the year, well, then they'll keep the four tight ends. And I truly wonder if they might not kind of use Manhurts in more of the role that Bellinger had last year. Because, as we told you, Daniel Bellinger wound up agreeing to a deal with the Tennessee Titans. So he's gone. So maybe Manhurts becomes not only the third blocker and the guy who could go in line when they design a heavy package, but maybe he also winds up playing a fullback snaps. Maybe. See, if you keep four tight ends, I don't think you have room for a fullback on the roster. I don't think so. But we'll have to see. You know, there's been a lot of talk, and we talked on the program last week with one of the Ravens insiders in Baltimore, and he thought that Picard, the fullback, would certainly be someone that the Giants would have interest in because of the connection to Harbaugh. But he also said, I think the Ravens are going to want to try to keep him, and that the Giants are going to have to bowl him over with some extra cash probably to get him to go. So I don't know if they're trying to get Ricard up here, the fullback, or not. But maybe they won't be able to get him up here. And maybe the Giants will just say, okay, fine, forget it. We'll just go with the 4 tight ends, and we'll figure out, how we can deploy Manhurts and maybe, kind of do what we want to do schematically, even without a true fullback. That's certainly possible. The point that I'm making, though, is likely getting chapters out of the Travis Kelce playbook in Kansas City because of Matt Nagy. That is the point that I really want to make with you right now. And that on occasion, when they wind up using slot receivers, and that may not be a ton, potentially Olszewski or Hyatt might wind up filling that role, because I don't think that's going to be a 90-plus catch position anymore, at least not for a receiver. Remember, Wan'Dale Robinson last year caught 90-plus balls. He's now going to Tennessee, and he was second in the National Football League in receiving yardage out of the slot. I think most of the receiving yardage out of the slot for the Giants is going to wind up with likely. So therefore, you don't necessarily need to upgrade your slot receiver spot. And maybe Hyatt and or Olszewski can hold that down for whatever snaps it turns out to be, because they're going to be the leftover ones that aren't used by likely. I hope I explained that to you without getting too convoluted and going in circles, but that's how I see it. Okay. We have Armand Duda says Coach Daboll is bringing his luggage to Tennessee with him. Bringing players too. Says, hate to lose Wan'Dale and Cor'dale Flott, but happy they got money they deserve and that they are going with Daboll. James Carter Kent says he was on the Bears team. Oh, he's talking about Tom Thayer. Let me give you Tom's. I'm sorry. Maybe I should have been a little bit more specific as to Tom's seasons. He was with the Bears from 85 to 92, okay? Obviously, when he spoke of Jim McMahon and the Bears team that won that Super Bowl, that would have been Super Bowl 20, right? Before the Giants won it in 21, the 86 season. Tom's last year, he played with the Miami Dolphins. But that was only one season in 1993, okay? I probably should have been a little more specific. And that's my fault for not doing that. But like you said, once you heard him talk about Jim McMahon, and I did tell you he won a Super Bowl, well, that kind of narrowed it down, right? I mean, 85, that was the Bears' year. So let's see what else we have here. We have James Carter Kent says, I'm going to miss Flott. Absolutely. But Kevin Sullivan 8 says, Flott ain't Ronnie Lott. No, he was not Ronnie Lott, but he was the Giants' best cornerback last year from start to finish, and there's no doubt about that. James Carter Kent says, this means we're drafting a cornerback. I think it's obvious. The Giants absolutely have to go get a corner because, you see, Ordarius Washington is a slot corner. He's not a boundary corner. So, he may help in general, with depth, and certainly I would think on kick coverage because he's also done some of that. So that's really great. But that doesn't solve any issues on the boundary corner, where right now you have Tay Banks coming off 2 very puzzling seasons, and you have Paulson Adebo, who was signed to a huge free agent contract last year and did not play up to it. So in my opinion, I've talked about Chidobe Awuzie as a potential relatively inexpensive free agent signing. Now, let me just take a look here. If you don't mind me doing this, I'm going to just take a quick look at some of the updated free agent agreements today and see if Awuzie has been scapped up. And I hope he hasn't, because I really think he'd be a perfect target for someone in the Giants' specific position. And no, he has not been. Awuzie has not been agreed to with any deals as of yet. And I just think he'd be a wonderful addition for a team in the situation as the Giants. I do think, though, that they would want to draft one as well. Boundary corners. Not slot corner. No, I don't. No, that's not the issue now. They need boundary corners. That's where the depth has to be. Okay. All right, let's see. What do we have here? James Carter Kent says cornerback, wide receiver, and O-line in the draft. Well, I'll tell you what, James. Right now, the Giants inside linebackers, and I'm not going to talk about the guys deep on the depth chart, but it's Edmunds and Muasau. Let me double check here to see if Micah McFadden has signed anywhere. I think that Micah McFadden needs to be back, and as I'm looking, I don't see his name anywhere. So that's good. Hopefully McFadden comes back. I would then consider drafting another inside linebacker. Okay? I would. I'm not telling you where, but I would consider drafting another inside linebacker or potentially even adding a very inexpensive veteran. But I agree with you. Corner, wide receiver, O-line, all priorities. I also, quite frankly, wouldn't mind potentially if there's a defensive lineman, okay? If there's a defensive lineman, that's low on the priority list. No question. You're right. You're absolutely right. The three biggest priorities, I don't think there's any doubt. Corner, wide receiver, offensive line. You can put them in whatever order you want to. I do think corner would be number one for me. But whether or not you want to flop offensive line and wide receiver, you absolutely need to get both of those positions fortified. But yeah, next level down, I would try to get another inside linebacker, and I would probably look to get another defensive lineman. Armand Duda says, Flott is a cornerback, Lott was a safety. Actually, Ronnie Lott was originally a corner when he came up with the 49ers and converted into what became a Hall of Fame safety. So, anyway. Kevin Sullivan 8, because the names rhyme. Oh, never mind. We don't need to get into that dissertation between the two of you guys. All right, let's see. Our name 188. I'm pumped for our new linebacker. There you go. Let's see what else. L. McCullum 43. Thoughts on Kayvon Thibodeau for BJT? How much more would the Giants need to add? I'm not sure I totally understand what you mean. Honestly, I'm not sure, L. McCullum. I just know I'm a big Kayvon Thibodeau fan, and I am against trading him. And I've said that the entire offseason, and I continue to say that. Play him in his contract year. Let him play his butt off. Let him have a terrific season that you will benefit from. And then if he does have that terrific season and signs a fat, juicy contract elsewhere, and by the way, did you see what Jalen Phillips got today? Did you see that? I don't know if you caught me earlier today on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Okay, I don't know if you did. Okay, Jalen Phillips went from the Eagles to the Carolina Panthers. Okay, yeah. He went from the Eagles to the Carolina Panthers. And I want to make sure I got this number right again, because when John mentioned it to me on today's show, I absolutely flipped. 4 years for $120 million. Now, I know there's the guarantee, there's the incentives and all this other stuff. I get it. But the overall deal is 4 for $120. For Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips is a 6'5", 270 soaking wet edge guy. All right? He's not much different than Kayvon Thibodeau in terms of stature. Well, what do you think Jaelan Phillips has done during his career to warrant that kind of money? $30 million. He's averaging $30 million. Okay? Think about this. 4 years, $120 million for a guy who has never had more than 8.5 sacks when he had it as a rookie, and then since that time had 1 7-sack season, and last year had 5 sacks. Giants fans, you have Kayvon Thibodeau on his 5th-year option for $14 million. Half the price of Jaelan Phillips. Half. Now, do I need to remind you that Kayvon Thibodeau had 11.5 sacks in 2023? Now, I know he was hurt the last 2 seasons, had 5.5 in 24, and only 2.5 last year because he was banged up. I understand that. But for the price you're paying him, let him work his butt off, play hard, and play well in his contract year as he looks for big money, because he must be reading about Jaelan Phillips getting $30 million for 4 years, and he's going to be $120 million for 4 years, $30 million a year, and he's going to be saying, I can't wait to get that. So what do you think he's going to do this year? He's going to absolutely ball out. All right. Now, we are so privileged and so honored to have one of my good friends on the program, a guy who has been a teammate of mine in the broadcast booth, the one and only Super Bowl champion 2 times and member of the 2016 New York Giants playoff squad, Jonathan Casillas. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Of course, Paul, man. I'm glad you invited me, man. Good to see you, brother.
Oh, it is so good to see you too. And we just saw each other recently, and you are looking as dapper and as good as ever. You got that Yankee cap going. I mean, come on.
Always repping. Hey, where are you at? I know that's not the Giants facility. Where are you at right now?
Oh, that's just a little trick photography. That's all it is.
Okay. Got a nice little background behind you. I like it, man.
So it is so good to talk to you again. And what I wanted to do, we earlier just talked to Tom Thayer, who played with the Chicago Bears on their Super Bowl team in '85, and is now their Bears radio analyst. And I asked him all about Tremaine Edmunds.
Yeah.
And he gave us everything you could possibly know about him. Now, being a linebacker yourself, I know you always appreciate the position. And you know that at 6'4", 250 pounds, he's got one heck of a frame, and he's a plugger. And he's going to hit people, and he's going to fill gaps, and he's going to thump guys to the ground. That seems to be the type of linebacker that John Harbaugh always had when he was in Baltimore. How important is it not only to have a talented linebacker in your unit, in your room, but a thumper who could have that green dot in the middle and be kind of the leader of the group?
That's huge, Paul. And look, I know the game has now evolved to more of a passing game, right? A pretty game, right? But the defense still, the number one thing is still stop the run, right? And that's what the Giants haven't done the last few seasons. The Giants have been, excuse my French, but piss poor in the category of stopping the run. And Tremaine Edmunds, I think he provides that, that body, that big body, the A gap to B gap type person that's going to be able to fill those gaps. He has 100+ tackles every single year he's been in the NFL. So he's a ball magnet. He's a guy that's going to get to that ball, and deliver some punishment when he gets there too, like you said earlier, with that big old frame. But I like what the Giants are doing in free agency. Losing Bobby. Bobby's a friend of mine. Great person. I think he had a little bit of a rough couple years without the Wink Martindale system. I think he thrived in that system.
Yeah.
I didn't think he did so well in Shane Bowen's system. But hopefully, Tremaine Edmunds could come in and, he's not young, right? He's an older veteran player. Hopefully he still has those good years left where he can go ahead and provide them for John Harbaugh-led Giants.
We don't know exactly what kind of defense Denard Wilson's bringing from Tennessee. You know, he succeeded Bowen down there, and now he's up here with the Giants. But clearly, the idea here is that Edmunds is going to be the 3-down middle linebacker. He is going to have to replace Bobby Okereke in every way, shape, and form as the guy who is the heart and soul. And if they get a rebound year out of Dexter Lawrence, well, that just makes your middle linebacker all that much better, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of your best friends is a big, fat, 340, 50 plus lineman right in front of you that has the all pro potential like Dexter Lawrence. And I do expect him to have a bounce back year. You know, if you look at last season and combine that with the season prior to that, him missing all of those games at the end of 2024, I don't know if he truly recovered from that elbow injury from 2024 because I think his production says he didn't. You know, hopefully he does have a bounce back season. You know, these guys, man, and this is the thing about NFL. These guys are so tough, Paul. Like they don't admit to when they're not 100%, right? They're just going out there and playing good football. So I do expect Dexter to come back because, you know, no matter what the pieces that come in and out, you know, the Giants definitely need to sign a cornerback. You know, they need to do something with the safety position, right? Let's see how they attack the draft. Dexter Lawrence, he's the guy. He's been the guy since he's been on the team, you know, and I'm happy that Harbaugh, you know, stuck with him and, you know, believed in him and that he can come back and show us the promise that he showed us not too long ago where Paul, he was leading the league in sacks in 2024 before he had the elbow injury. That's the Dexter I know. And if he can get back to even close to that, you know, the Giants are going to have, you know, a really stout defense. And for me, yes, it's getting to the quarterback, but it's about stopping that run, man. And you got to put another body by him. And I'm excited to see because free agency is kicking off. I'm trying to stay up to date, Paul, because since you texted me earlier about jumping on the show, a couple moves already happened, so I'm trying to stay up to date with everything, man. It's going fast.
Well, now let me just keep it here before we go to a couple of these other guys, and I want to hear what you think about moving forward. Some of the guys they lost and how they got to fill some spots. Let me just ask this because I still get people on Big Blue Kickoff Live and on this show who continue to want to trade Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, everybody can have an opinion. You've heard me just before you came on. I say he's in his contract year. Let him ball out. He's going to want to make big money next year. So he's going to give you everything that he's got and then some. Why not take advantage of those snaps? Okay? Take advantage of those snaps. And if he goes free agent and you can't pay him at the end of the year, you'll probably wind up getting a compensation pick for him anyway. Because if he plays well, he's going to get a fat, juicy deal, and you'll get a pick back next year. So why would you deal him now?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I get the ticket price on him for this year is pretty hefty.
Oh, it's
Not
only
as
14
hefty,
mil.
but not
Jonathan,
as
it's
hefty
not
if he would have
much.
got a new deal, Paul. Right? Not as
Oh,
hefty
yeah.
as if he would have got a new deal,
Right,
right? So
right.
he's playing it out. He's playing out that contract, right? And look, like I said when I started the show, this league has evolved into more of a pass-friendly league, right? The protections for the quarterback, the protections for wide receivers, the kickoff rule, all of that is talking to the offense, beneficial for the offense. So you need multiple pass rushers, and the Giants have that. If Kayvon Thibodeau stays, they do have 3 pass rushers that can stand up or put their hand in the ground if they need to rush the passer, right? You looked at Abdul Carter's impact on the team last year. I don't think he would have had that impact like he did the last 4 games if Kayvon Thibodeau's out of the lineup because he would have had to been in different situations and you were able to stack Abdul Carter over the center for some of the games, for some of these
Well, yeah, and then when
important plays that
Kayvon
he had
got
this year.
hurt, you know, though, Jonathan, when Kayvon got hurt at the end of the year and they started to move Abdul into different spots, he started to get better. But I still think that having Tibbs on the team was helpful to him because he learned a lot from watching Tibbs.
Absolutely. I mean, and he's a valuable player for the New York Giants. You know, like there's other players that we could look at that didn't have the impact that Kayvon had, and everybody just keeps going back to him being a first round draft pick. I get that part, but is he still valuable? Absolutely. Is he still valuable $15 million? Absolutely, Paul. For me, I think that's a great thing when you have multiple pass rushers on the team where you got to revolve those guys in. They got to keep coming in and out the game. They got to keep them fresh. So for me, I like that they didn't move Thibodeau, I think he means a lot. I think he's one of those guys that Harbaugh talked about in his press conference interview where he said that he want guys to love football. I think
Yeah,
Kayvon's a guy that loves football.
I agree with you 100%. All right, let me go over the list here just to get you caught up, Jonathan, if you didn't see all the names. So the Giants bring in punter Jordan Stout from Baltimore. They bring in Isaiah Likely, the tight end from the Ravens. Ardarius Washington, nickel corner and free safety from the Ravens. They bring in Isaiah Likely. Oh, I said him, didn't I? Yeah. They bring in middle linebacker Tremaine Edmunds from the Bears. They retained Hodgins at wide receiver. Manhurts at tight end this morning. Gunnar Olszewski a couple of days ago at wide receiver. And right tackle Jermaine Eluemunor. All right, so let me just go to two guys here out of this list I want to get a comment from you on. First of all, Jermaine Eluemunor had himself a career year this past year. A lot of folks thought he was going to get big money. Looks like, based on the reported numbers, he more than doubled his salary. I'm just glad the Giants were able to keep him.
Absolutely. And the thing is with Jermaine, he's very versatile, right? He's played a lot of games at left tackle. He's played a lot of games at right guard. So he adds that versatility there. So not to say that the Giants are not locked in with him, but if they decide to go in the draft, to, let's say get a right tackle in the draft. I don't know draft like that, Paul, but
Right.
if the Giants decide to do that, he does have that versatility with him. You know, he's a guy that played on the Giants roster the last few years. The Giants last year were top five rushing team. And that has been attributed to him because he's a mauler, right? He had a really good year this past year with the New York Giants, and you got to have a good, consistent starting five when it comes to this offensive line, right? And that adds that familiarity, that continuity that you need in the offensive line. I love the sign of Jermaine Eluemunor. Pause real quick. Rewind a couple years ago against Detroit, the practices. Remember that a couple years ago? And they were getting into those scuffles. Jermaine Eluemunor was a new Giant at that point. He was the one getting into those scuffles. Not to say he was starting them, but when they were going on, he was the one getting right in there. So he's a fighter. He's a locker room guy. He's a guy if you can't get anything done, look for him to go ahead and make a hole for you. That's the type of guy that Jermaine Eluemunor is.
Jonathan, you forgot he's a Jersey guy, too.
Yes, sir. Let's go. I did forget about that.
All right, let me ask you, the other guy I want to ask you about on this list is Isaiah Likely, because he is a dynamic pass receiving tight end. Your thoughts on how the Giants might use him? I was kind of contemplating that I think he's going to be used as a big slot because they've already got Theo Johnson, who, while he's been productive, he's had some dropsies issues in the passing game. And I just think that you're looking at Likely and Andrews in Baltimore, and now you got Likely and Johnson with the Giants. Harbaugh loves throwing to two different tight ends. This could be pretty wild.
Yeah, you think 12 personnel will be a personnel that the Giants are looking to employ this year pretty consistently. And you talked about some of the drops from Theo Johnson last year. Likely the last 2 years, 2 drops, Paul. 2 drops in 2 years.
He catches the ball.
And he's lining up in the slot 73% of the time. So you lose Wan'Dale, who is, congratulations to him for his contract. I think Wan'Dale has had a heck of a career. I think this last year he's proven that he's one of the quality slot receivers in the game. The Giants kind of replace his productivity from. I mean, you can't really reproduce a 1,000-yard wide receiver with the tight end with only 400 receiving yards, but I think Likely is now coming into his own, and he was basically behind a top-tier tight end in the league and Mark Andrews for his whole career, for his whole 4 years. So look for him to get a lot more targets than he has in the past, the combination with Theo Johnson. Chris Manhurts was also re-signed, and Paul, I actually saw him because we had a clinic we did for adaptive kids, and one of his kids is on the spectrum, so he was there participating, help coaching and stuff like that. Paul, he's huge. Chris Manhurts is a huge human being, and I've seen him, but like afar, up close. When you get the bring in hug, the dap with the bring in, I'm like looking up at him like, wow, bro, like you're huge. So he's the blocking guy, Theo Johnson, and look, we've seen teams deploy 13 personnel, right, with 3 tight ends.
Yes.
I think the Bills do it, definitely. The Chiefs do it, right? Those
Even
teams
the Ravens did it with Kolar as their third tight end. They did it too.
it's a way to do it where you can replicate 11 personnel because you can move one of them to a fullback type situation, one of them in the slot, one of them in line, so you can have some versatility when you have these three tight end type personnel groups.
All right, now let's go to the other list. These are the guys the Giants have lost over the course of the last several days. Wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, cornerback Cor'dale Flott, tight end Daniel Bellinger, safety Dane Belton, a special teams demon, center Austin Schlottman, punter Jamie Gillen, linebacker Bobby Okereke, and offensive lineman James Hudson. All right, I'm going to let you start where you want to start here, Jonathan. We've already mentioned Robinson. We understand the Giants will have a different look in the slot, but clearly they're going to look to get some big production out of that spot, but just in a different way. I don't know. Where do you want to go next? You want to go to Flott? You want to go
Yeah,
to Bellinger?
Flop.
You want to go to Belton?
Let's talk flop because I think that cornerback position, the Giants, man, like they need corners, Paul. Like the Giants need corners. You
Boundary
know,
corners.
I mean, Flott he had a great year last year. I think his best year in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
One of his most healthiest. He's had troubles being healthy for a whole, the whole season. But he had a great year. So now for me, it's like, all right, now we have a big void because there was a void there with Flott on the team, I believe. Now there's a big void. The Giants need corners. Like this is like for me, it has to be after today, because all the free agency stuff that's been moving around, I feel like corner has to be the number one position after losing Fly. Right?
Totally agree.
You definitely, losing Dave Belton was huge too, but he wasn't as productive as Flott was and as consistent in the starting rotation as Flott was. And Flott, I think he's coming off, like I said, his career year. The Giants need corners. Like I can't say that enough, Paul. I wouldn't be surprised if we come away from this offseason with the Giants signing 3 or 4 more corners to this roster. I know we got some guys, Art Green, some guys that the Giants maybe want to figure out contractually wise and what they're going to do. But I would definitely expect a nice free agent signing or very early in the draft going after that cornerback position.
I'm glad you mentioned Green because Art Green's an exclusive rights free agent, and that's important because of his ability to cover on special teams.
Right.
Last year, Dane Belton, even though he had a career high 100 tackles, he had 20 special teams tackles. Jonathan, as a special teams demon yourself, I want to bring this to your attention because he tied for, and I want to go back and look at the number again, he tied for 6th in the NFL with 20 special teams tackles. That is a void right there. And I hope that Art Green, as an exclusive right free agent, comes back. But the Giants need to make sure that those coverage units are up to snuff.
Yeah, losing Dane Belton, it definitely hurts the defense, but it is traumatic to lose an impactful player as he was. He developed as the special teams leader for this New York Giants team. And as I turned on the film every single week, he was the personal protector and punt, and he was
Yep.
down there. He was always making the right plays. A lot of open field tackles that he made, first guy down the field. And that's very difficult to do. So Dane Belton needs to be replaced on special teams. You need a guy to be a 4-core special team, meaning punt return, kickoff, kick return. One of those type of guys that maybe their primary position is linebacker, safety, running back, tight end, whatever that position is, but they're a special teams guy. 100%, they're playing on all of the special teams downs, no matter what, except extra point. We need a guy like that. Dane Belton has filled that void that I feel like hasn't been there for the New York Giants in a very long time. As that special teams guru, the Giants had to figure out a way to replace him. Maybe it's a guy on a roster like Art Green where he can elevate his game to being a guy like Dane Belton and being as productive as Dane Belton was. But you can't disregard the impact that Dane Belton had on special teams.
I think it's interesting that, John Harbaugh came into the league as a special teams coach in Philadelphia and has always paid a great deal of attention to it, just like Bill Belichick did in New England. And I'm hoping that because of that attention that the head coach puts on special teams, that this will be a unit somehow, some way finds a guy who's going to handle that job. I don't think that Harbaugh is going to let that slip through the cracks.
No, not at all. Harbaugh definitely kind of reminds me a little bit about a little bit with Bill and how he did things. And when he saw players, right, like he saw me specifically as the L5 on kickoff. Like he was like, yeah, you're good on kickoff, but we specifically see you fitting good with the L5. He had a plan for me already before I got to the Patriots, right? I see Harbaugh as that same guy. Like he's gonna get a guy that's gonna be the L2 or L3, L4 on kickoff. Oh, you're definitely playing our personal protector on punt. That's the type of guy because he has that special teams experience. He understands the importance of special teams. Look at the signing a punter early
Yeah.
on in free agency, right? Pro Bowl guy, right? All pro guy, led the league in punting last year. The Giants have kind of been very inconsistent with Jamie Gillen over the years. You might have some good kicks from him. You might kick it 20 yards, right? I feel like you have to have some consistency in your kicking game. For me, Paul, I would definitely like to see a kicker coming through the Giants that the Giants can rely on and on a
Yeah.
consistent basis,
I'm
not just
sure.
being
I'm
healthy.
sure a veteran will probably come in to compete with Ben Sauls because
Right.
Sauls finished the year last year.
He did.
He didn't look bad, but you got to bring in competition.
Absolutely. And that's something for that kicker position. You need competition. You know, let the cream rise to the top, as Macho Man Randy Savage would say.
Oh man, you know I will say this, Jonathan. It was a very active first day during the legalized tampering free agent period. I personally did not think the Giants would have this much going on right out of the box, but I think it's telling us one thing. When John Harbaugh told us all at the press conference, you remember what he said about why not talk playoffs? Why can't we turn it around really quick? This shows me that him in conjunction with general manager Joe Shane, they weren't sitting back. They're not waiting for anything to happen. They're aggressively going to do everything they can to try to get this team turned around in 2026. They're not going to be passive about it at all.
Not at all. And I don't want to use the word rebuilding. It's more of restructuring, right? You definitely, I mean, they're literally doing it in the building right now, right? They're restructuring the building itself, right? But I definitely see the restructuring happen, right? A change of culture has begun, you know, and I hear people saying like, oh yeah, we got the new coaches, but that doesn't mean we're going to change the roster. That's exactly what it means when you bring in new coaches. You're going to do something with this roster because he's going to get guys in there that he's familiar with, right? Like Likely, like Jordan, the punter, right? You're going to bring in guys that you understand. Okay, I don't have a question mark about this guy. He's proven. I understand how this guy ticks, what makes this guy tick, how he works, the type of professional that he is. And that's what Harbaugh's doing. He's bringing in guys that he believes that can
Mm-hmm.
come to this team, right? The media capital of the world in New York. It's not easy to play here, Paul. I think the Giants have figured out they got the guy at quarterback, very young, very talented, brash, a little cocky, a lot of swag, right? And the one interview that he had, Paul, and it was with you towards the end of the year, you asked him about, first of all, you buttered him up a little bit because you was like, oh, I see that you're learning or you're protecting yourself. And he was like, yo, you saw that, right? But that interview, Paul, when you asked him that,
He thanked me actually.
that was what I was waiting to hear. Because before that, I was like, he gotta learn, like he better learn, because he can't keep taking them hits like he did against New England, right? He can't do that, right?
No.
And when he was talking to you, he said, I'm learning. That's all I needed to hear, Paul. You know why? Because for me, I think it was his ego was getting him in trouble on the football field in terms of not making the safe decision, right? Like, safe for a quarterback is okay because the franchise is dependent on you, right? Other positions, you might look down on a linebacker not, bringing the boom, right? You might look down on the running back not bringing the boom. But for the quarterback position, it's okay to choose the safe route. And you provide yourself with an advantage, right? Look at Patrick Mahomes, right? Look at not this year, look at previous years, right? Always runs out of bounds. Nobody ever even tries to hit him because they already know he's going out. You know what he did this past year? because he got that credit from the defensive guys in the league, and everybody, they don't want to touch him. They don't want to go near him. He started dropping his shoulder on guys this year because now guys are slowing down because they know he's going out of bounds. But because he's been doing it for his whole career, now he has the option to run some guys over every now and again because they lowered their guard. You heard what the Patriots were saying about him. Oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna hit him.
Yeah.
We're gonna hit Dart.
Yeah.
Because that's what he's been showing. He's been showing that he could be hit. So for me, now that he's learning that, that was the only thing for me. I wanted him to learn, and I knew he would have. But his media reaction, some of the answers to these questions was like, he didn't learn yet. He didn't learn yet. But that interview that you had, Paul, that's when I was like, thank God. Like he finally said what I needed for him to say, that he's learning. Because you know why, Paul? Because if he was throwing interceptions, right, he would say, man, I got to do better. I got to, I can't throw that pass, right? He wasn't throwing interceptions. He was making bad choices with his body, not his arm, not his really like decision making in terms of the actual quarterback throwing the football, right? He wasn't making a lot of mistakes there, but he didn't take the same approach as if he was making mistakes in throwing the football. But now I'm telling you, after that interview, I was like, all right, the Giants are going to be fine. This kid, he's learned his lesson, right? Because we all learn our lessons, Paul. I learned my lesson too, right? In the NFL. I'm a 225-pound linebacker. I can't hit everybody, right? So I had to learn my lesson too. So I'm glad that he learned his lesson. I love the way this roster is shaping up. I know it's not done yet, but I'm loving how it's shaping up, Paul.
All right. Well, Jonathan, I've kept you long enough. Tell people about your new foundation and maybe some events that you might have coming up. I know it's a source of great pride for you.
Absolutely. So the Jonathan Casillas for Progress Foundation, it is in the first year of its workings, but I've been doing work in New Jersey for 25 years plus, Paul.
Forever.
I've been doing it since the beginning of high school, right? When I started doing community service. The day I graduated from high school, I spoke at a kindergarten graduation. So I really been in the community. I did 9 schools for Read Across America last week in New Brunswick. So I'm always continuously trying to do things. I'm also coaching this year at Hudson Catholic, so that's something that I have on the
Wow.
agenda. And for me, if anybody wants to know anything that we have going on, because we have some things that we're kind of finalizing schedule wise, you could just follow my For Progress Foundation page on Instagram. It's For Progress Foundation. You can follow my personal page, Jade_52 on Instagram. That's pretty much where I'm at most of the time, Paul, trying to, do right and give back to the community, cementing my legacy. Some kids come in, I went into so many schools last week and they're like, are you the football player? And I'm like, no, I don't play football anymore. And they get so confused. And it's like, kid, like I've been retired almost longer than you've been born. So I'm still a representative for the New York Giants. The Giants have a lot of flag football activities that we're doing this month that I'm be heading up for them with them. So I'm excited about that opportunity as well, because the number one growing sport in the world is girls flag football. So I'm happy to be, one of the people that's representing for the Giants in that regard.
Well, you know what the Yankees had on? It looks like you could play right field.
To tell you the truth, I don't know anything about baseball.
Yeah, but you are a Yankees fan, and that counts for something.
I am a Yankees fan. I chose the right team at a young age.
Excellent. Jonathan Casillas, thank you so much. I appreciate your time tonight. Stay well, my friend, and best of luck with the events with the foundation.
Thank you, my brother. Always a pleasure talking to you, Paul.
You'll be good.
You too.
Jonathan Casillas joining us on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. So grateful to have him come on tonight's program. And again, it has been a very busy day for the New York Football Giants. And, folks, honestly, I'm not going to pull any punches here. I didn't think that there would be that much flying around at the Giants facility in day number 1. I was very much afraid they wouldn't be able to afford Robinson or Flott or Eluemunor. And somehow they were able to find a way to bring Jermaine Eluemunor back. I wish all of the Giants who have exited the team today. Well, Wan'Dale Robinson was a terrific Giant, terrific teammate, a guy who I had a great pleasure to cover and was always available to talk, no matter what the situation. He's a pro and a quality guy. Can't say enough about Daniel Bellinger, who also, by the way, much like Jonathan Casillas, an outstanding gentleman and really valuable to the community. And I know the people in Tennessee are going to be thrilled to have him, in addition to being a pros pro and a two-way tight end. Cor'dale Flott coming off a career year with the Giants. You guys, if you followed me for a long time, you know coming out of LSU, I was a huge fan. He finally, this past season, really blossomed into the player I knew he could be. So I certainly wish him well. Dane Belton always seemed to find a way to be around the football. Constantly around turnovers, either causing them or making them. And really was a terrific special teams player for the Giants. And I'm sure the Jets are very happy to get their hands on him. That's a guy, as we talked about with Jonathan Casillas, they're going to have to replace some of that value on special teams. Austin Schlottman did a very nice job when John Michael Schmitz was out of the lineup. So, Brian Daboll, he knew what he was seeing. So guess what? Told the people in Tennessee, let's go get him. So he's down there. Jamie Gillen, always a quality guy. I know we had some ups and downs, some inconsistencies, but he doubled when the Giants needed him to be the kickoff man this year, and that put a lot of extra strain on his leg. He did everything he could do, didn't complain about it, wanted to be a good teammate, so I give him a lot of credit for that. I wish him well. Bobby Okereke, his first year with the Giants, I thought he was a Pro Bowl caliber player. Then, as you heard Jonathan say under Shane Bowen, it didn't work out so well. Well, it didn't work out well for a lot of defensive players under Shane Bowen, so I don't hold that against him. He had a bad neck injury back in the 24 season. That was pretty serious. He came back, had 140 tackles last year, but specifically in the last month of the season, I thought Okereke played very well. And then James Hudson, who was signed last year as the third tackle, the swing tackle, if you will, got beaten out for the third tackle spot by fifth-round draft choice Marcus Bowe out of Purdue, who now, by the way, can stay as the third tackle. Now that you have Thomas at the left tackle and Eluemunor remaining at the right tackle, Marcus Bowe can stay as the swing tackle, or the third tackle, if you will. Perhaps, if Greg Van Roten does not come back as your starting right guard, perhaps Marcus Bowe can move into that spot. Or maybe, just maybe, Marcus Bowe stays as the third swing tackle, and Van Roten is the starting right guard, and Bowe becomes the backup in both spots. Either way, the re-signing or the agreement today with Jermaine Eluemunor, very critical for the Giants because it really helps them out. Not only maintaining continuity because the line played its best that it had in several years last season, but also because it allows them some flexibility there and not to have to necessarily sweat out, oh, what's going to happen? We have holes that we just don't have enough bodies to fill. So definitely a very, very big deal there. I want to reiterate that all of the things that happened today are agreements, handshakes, verbal deals until players pass their physicals and sign their contracts beginning Wednesday at 4 o'clock. None of these deals are official, and that's why you may hear over the next day or two about some guys who may get the contracts reworked, or guys who may even take a pay cut or may even get released to save cap room. Those things are going to have to be done by Wednesday at 4 so that the guys coming in can sign their paperwork, because that's when they start getting counted in terms of the numbers. All right, I'm going to hang on with you guys. We're an hour and a half into the program. This is a special free agent edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. For those of you who are regulars, we come your way every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We usually do a 90-minute program. Now, this week, as I say, free agent news warranted me moving the show. So we're doing it tonight. Unless the Giants do something really big in the next 2 days, we won't be back on Wednesday. This will be the show for the week because this was the hot day for Giants news. So I thought it was important that we were here for you tonight. I didn't want to wait till Wednesday. So we'll come your way a week from Wednesday. That'll be the plan for the next edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But for now, because we had two great guests and interviews, Tom Thayer, the former Bills Super Bowl champion guard from their radio booth, and Jonathan Casillas, you just heard him, two great guests to kind of give you more perspective on the Giants' moves and what's happening. I figured, you know what, let's go till 45 after the hour. We'll go another 10 minutes. And I'm sorry for those of you who wanted to call in or video in, but with the guests we had, it was just impossible to get to you. Now, in the meantime, what I'm going to try to do here, I'm going to try to see if I can get to some of your chats that you put over here on the side. I will give you this. I got a couple of names, and I want to make sure that these names have not been taken yet in free agency while this show is going on. Because, quite frankly, I was paying attention to the program and my guests and your comments and not paying a whole lot of attention to the latest free agency news since we started the show. So I'm going to tell you, yes, Jalen Naylor was a free agent target of mine that has since been agreed to. He got a deal with the Raiders earlier today. So he's off the board. Thornton, the wide receiver from Kansas City, who I think would be a really nice fit for the Giants. I don't see him on the list of guys who have agreed. So Thornton would still be out there if you were looking for a potential free agent signee. If you were also looking for a guard, if you're really getting worried about the Giants being thin at guard, and you know what, you don't know about Van Roten coming back, I suggest Kevin Zeitler. Zeitler was a former Giant. We know he loves football. He absolutely loves football. He is a football head through and through. I know he's 34. He was in Baltimore when Harbaugh was in Baltimore, so he knows him. And quite honestly, he's a mauler, and specifically in the run game. At 34 years old, he's probably talking about a one-year contract and maybe not very expensive. So if you want insurance and a guy who might even be able to compete for a starting job, I would recommend Kevin Zeitler as a guy, as a potential signee. So there's a receiver, there's a guard. Linebacker-wise, you know, I'm not sure right now linebacker-wise where I would go. I had some names earlier in the free agent period that I was thinking about. But at this point, after signing Edmunds, I think what I would try to do more than anything is bring Micah McFadden back. That would be probably the most important inside linebacker move for me as we sit here today. That would be it. I would want to get Micah McFadden back in here. Now, other than that, if you wanted to add somebody, and I had my short list here, and I'm trying to call it up, so please bear with me a second. You know, I'm not afraid to talk to you guys through the computer and let you know what I'm doing. I'm looking over my list here. I had the following linebackers as potentially reasonably priced guys. There was Pratt from the Colts, Singleton and Sternad from the Broncos. Now, Sternad, I believe he's going back to the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken. I thought I saw that, but maybe not. I thought I saw that. I know Singleton is going back to the Broncos, okay? And then there was Gibbons, the restricted free agent from the New England Patriots. Those were the interior linebackers at, I thought, relatively inexpensive prices that I would consider to add in that spot. And then the other guy that I would think about if you're talking about thin spots on the Giants depth chart, and I want to make sure, yeah, I'm looking here, Chidozie Awuzie, the corner. I think he is a reasonably priced corner, and man, he's got some mileage on his tires, but I think he'd be a terrific pickup, could even compete for a starting job. So those are the guys, the one guy at each position that I would target, hopefully at a reasonable price, that would be at the 4 key positions right now that the Giants still need, I think, to address. You may feel differently, and that's okay. I've got no problem with that because this is all about opinions right now. We really don't know. I will say this, and I've said it before on this program as well as Big Blue Kickoff Live, and you're going to hear me continue to say it until we have the opportunity to talk to these coaches. I met John Harbaugh at the press conference when he was hired. Got snowed in, had 3 flights canceled over 2 days, did not make it out to the combine. So I didn't get to see him out there. I saw his video of his interviews, and I listened to the audio of his interviews. I got all of that, but I haven't talked to John Harbaugh personally outside of hello, shake his hands, and wish him luck since he got here. I need to hear more from him. I need to talk to him more to find out what makes him tick. I need to talk to Matt Nagy. I want to talk to Wilson. Denard Wilson. I want to talk to these guys. I want to know more about what makes them tick so that I can have a better educated opinion about what the Giants might be setting themselves up for. I just don't have enough of that right now. So by all means, all opinions are welcome. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. And I can't even give you a logical argument against anything that you might say without knowing what the coach's frame of reference is. So I give you that. In the final few minutes of the program, let me just see if I can quickly go over some of these. There's so many chats backed up. An hour's worth of chats backed up. You guys have absolutely been phenomenal tonight. I hope you enjoyed the program. I tried to bring you 2 guests who would give you some real valuable, juicy information. But unfortunately now, not only did we lose some of the calls that wanted to get in on the show, but I've got an hour's worth of chats that I just am not going to be able to get to. Here, let me give you this. An update on some of the unrestricted Giants free agents of note who at this point, I believe, unless they agreed to a deal in the last hour and a half, are still available. Quarterback Russell Wilson, offensive lineman Evan Neal, defensive tackle Rakeem Nunez-Roches, right guard Greg Van Roten, who I think will come back to the Giants if he still wants to play. Long snapper Casey Kreider, I do expect him to resign, but I think that'll be on the back end because there's no urgency there. At least I don't think so. Offensive lineman Joshua Ezeudu, I expect that he also will be re-signed at a very small price on the back end of free agency. Guard Aaron Stinney, also available. At least these are the guys who I think are a little bit more of name value, because there's several other guys who are so deep on the depth chart that the only other guys I think of any quote ilk, Micah McFadden, we talked about him. DJ Davidson, defensive tackle, played 24% of the snaps last year. He's only 27 years old. You know what? If they can't get another defensive lineman, maybe he does make his way back. I don't know. And then other than that, Bryce Ford Wheaton coming back off of his horrible injury last season. He's a restricted free agent. And then Nick Jones and Art Green, 2 corners who also helped on special teams, last year. Those guys are both exclusive rights free agents, so they won't cost much, and they're not likely to go anywhere. All right, let's just see quickly. I'm just trying to run down here. Oh, my goodness, you guys, you loaded up the chats tonight. And I'm very good about reading your chats. I try to get to everybody. I'm a fan-friendly kind of guy. That's why the program is here. It's for you guys. The problem is, how am I going to get to an hour's worth of chats in like another couple of minutes? I just don't have the time to do it. I really hope you guys are willing to come back and join me a week from Wednesday. Again, I tell you, if something big with the Giants happens over the course of the next 2 days, watch my Twitter page or X page, if you will, at Giants WFAN, and I'll come back again Wednesday night. If it's that important, if the Giants got something going on again that's really, really important, I will come back again. I promise you, I'll come back Wednesday night. But otherwise, I think for the time being, we'll just let this thing sit and kind of simmer like that pot of sauce on the stove on a gorgeous Sunday afternoon. I think that's what we'll do. And we will allow that to simmer and come back to you guys in all likelihood a week from Wednesday. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to our program. And of course, as you know, the New York Giants on SI Giants website and YouTube page is a place where you can get all of your updated Giants information. We do appreciate you for joining us tonight. The show is on the archive. If you want to go back and miss anything or catch what you missed, Tom Thayer gave us the complete lowdown, 20 minutes on Tremaine Edmunds and also what he thinks about the Giants potentially turning things around, much like the Chicago Bears did. That interview started 15 minutes into the program. And then an hour into the program, we had former Giants linebacker Jonathan Casillas join us for 25 minutes as we went through all of the Giants' comings and goings and updated you on what it looks like right now and what they still need to do moving forward. That'll do it for tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it, folks. I certainly did. And Big Blue Big Blue Breakdown Live, we'll be back again next week. Until then, I'm Paul Dottino. I wish you a very pleasant evening, everyone. Enjoy, stay well, and, keep your eyes and ears open because you never know what the Giants are going to do. So long, everybody.